Hey George, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing this year?
I'm great. I'm great. First of all, thank you for joining and accepting my invitation. I know we've been planning this forever, and you got hit by COVID, and that's what I heard.
Yeah. In the beginning of April, I got hit by it, and I don't know what's up with me, but it took me out for a good 2 weeks, and I still got a lingering cough a little bit here and there. So don't mind me if you hear me coughing during the podcast.
No, thank you. Well, thanks for being here. I want to start by saying, thanks to you. I know your background, your bio a little bit. You provided. You were a pharmacist. You've been posting lots of things about as a pharmacist. It's not an easy job. I can tell you, I took it as a granted until I start seeing your post and talking about being standing all day long. People are asking some ridiculous question like where you can find some band-aids and stuff like that. We're wasting your time, but again, I learned from you actually that it's not easy. And then I turn around, my wife is a nurse, and I turn around and I say, and the first thing I ask is, I don't understand why George is talking about it is, he's saying it's very difficult, and he's getting all these questions from the pharmacy in general for any product that, even including not related to your medication stuff, right? And plus you have to do your own job, which is assuring that all the pills are correct. So it was kind of an eye-opener for me. So anyways, thank you for supporting the community, right, during the COVID as well. I bet you guys, you must be stressed out on top of the regular job and doing COVID intake as well. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So who's George? George, the only thing I know, you are from Belleville. So who's this? Let's talk a little bit about George and where George came from. I think
All right.
that would be awesome.
So I'm George. I'm George Wang, and I'm a real estate investor and former pharmacist in Belleville, Ontario. I moved here, around 5 years ago or so because my girlfriend moved here for work, and I came here and ended up settling down here. And I've been investing in real estate for the last, I would say, good 3 years. 2019 is when I first started, and what I focus on is high cash flow, positive properties, primarily small 2 to 4 door multifamily properties in the Belleville area. And the reason I was focusing on that was with the explicit goal of, replacing my job income, not only replacing, but, you know, um, going beyond that so
Mhm.
that I can achieve financial freedom, financial independence, whatever you may call it, and so that I can retire early from my career as a pharmacist in your local day-to-day pharmacy.
Awesome, man. 2019 is all when it all started, basically.
Yeah, like in 2018 is when I purchased my personal residence. My
Mhm.
entire life leading up to that point. I mean, I've been trying to leave my profession for a long time, ever
All
since I
right.
started. Um, but uh, leading up to that point, I was so caught up in trying to acquire my first property, my home, and that took up all of my energy, all of my time, distracting me from how unhappy I was from my work. And but once I achieved that goal, I was lost. I didn't know what to do next,
All
and the trying to find a way to retire early as soon as possible consumed me. And I just from research alone, I stumbled upon real estate investing, and that's when I got started in early 2019. I still remember going to the first showing in February 2019.
Wow, what a journey. So any type of did you Google this, or did you say how to invest in real estate, or you had some specific books that you looked at, or
So it's a funny story actually. I we moved into our primary residence in October 2018, and not too long after we got quite depressed because with the realization that this is how you settle into the middle class and this is going to be our life for the rest in the next, I wasn't even 30 yet, so this is going to be our life for the next 40 years. maybe, and not really what I wanted to look forward to.
Right.
So we stumbled upon the book Rich Dad Poor Dad in
Hmm.
from just a walk in chapters, and I picked up that book. I read it. I think once I opened that book, it's
You
addictive,
just can.
man.
Yeah.
I finished the whole book in I think one day,
Hmm.
and from there I just couldn't stop thinking about how to invest in real estate.
Wow. I started with a book called Canadian Investing in Canada, I think. It's by
Uh,
Don R. Campbell.
Don Campbell, yes.
Yeah, so I started with that in 2008 actually, and it was just a gift I received from my wife and said, I think this is what you've been looking for, and she knew that I was struggling. I want something better, retire, retire at least with money in my pocket, not depending on the government, right? So she's like, this is a book probably you need to read. So it started like that, but it's amazing. I mean, I give you a perspective. Like, I am so uh, impressed in terms of the lots of people, 30, the goal is to retire early, and you know what? Honestly, I did not hear about this 20 years ago or 15 years ago, so the reason I didn't hear it, but because my goal was I'm going to retire. I'm in IT field, so I'm going to work on IT field, but I'm going to retire at 55. That's the goal I've set up, right? And I was just building up. The old mentality was build up your nest egg. So that's the kind of I was going towards, and then until I think really 5 years, I started hearing about fire. I started hearing about reduce your expense and all. The fire movement really came up strong. Maybe less than 10 years, I would say, right? So I'm kind of very pumped about it because I see, people in much younger than myself, are retiring within 3 years, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
the fire movement is definitely blown up in the recent years. I think with millennials, we've been kind of educated to see beyond what's considered norms in society and told,
Hmm.
in terms of get married, buy a house, have a kid, and then work until you're 65 so you can retire.
Hmm.
We aren't really willing to accept that as reality for most of us, and the pandemic really showed us what really matters in our life. Not everything we have in society can be taken for granted, and really showed us what things we really want out of life,
Hmm.
and what don't matter, and really pushed a lot of people to really reconsider their priorities in life and how to make sure they're available for the time that matters to them. So, like, for example, I always tell people, why do I want financial freedom? It's like when your kid's going to school for the first time, do you want to be there to walk into school or not? Or do you have to be at work, forced to be at work?
Right. Exactly. Those moments, golden moments, people usually say, they don't have time for that, right? Taking them to swimming classes or, and I would say, honestly, I've been there in some cases, working in Toronto while you live in the West End. I'm sure you know how the GO train goes, in the GTA. So absolutely, I think it is very interesting, and I just wish that I can rewind the time and go back and relearn that mentality, So congrats on that. I think you have we're gonna talk about it, but you have implemented that, and you are doing amazing there. So let's talk a little bit about being retired doesn't mean you just sit there on your butt and just watch TV, right? And so let's go
um
back. Let's talk a little bit just before we dive into due diligence here. The old retirement, like we're comparing a little bit the old and new there, but the old retirement was like, people will go fishing. They will put a sign, "Going fishing." I'm sure you are not retired. You are working, but you're doing something what you like. So can you elaborate a little bit on that, and before we go to the due diligence?
yeah, I think retirement has, there's a concept retirement that we associate with, but I would consider retirement anything that you choose to do that fulfills some kind of need or desire in your own life that would make you happier and more fulfilled person. It's
Right.
like, think about, what would you do if you didn't have to be at work? What would you choose to do? And that's what I've defined retirement as.
Right.
For a little bit after I retired, there was a period of transition that it was quite difficult to get over, because your entire life you've built this identity over yourself based on what your title is, what your profession is, what you do for a
Right.
living, that you
Right.
identify as that.
Right.
And suddenly you've been stripped of that. Now you're just some unemployed bum, I guess. And it did take a while. It's like, who am I, right?
Right.
What It took a while, and there was a period of time where I was actually kind of depressed for a good month. I didn't have a routine that I had to follow anymore. It was based on my own routine. And but in the beginning it was hard to determine your own routine without any external demands on you.
Yeah.
So I could technically wake up whenever I want, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily the best for me. So it took me a while to figure that part out.
Adjustment there.
Yeah, and it was quite challenging. I eventually found this neat little app that kind of what it does is it fills your calendar with tasks and habits that you'd like to do, and then automatically puts them in there for you. And you give a little range of when you'd like to do it. And if anything does come up and it automatically moves it to a different spot. It's called Reclaim.ai if anyone actually cares about it. Like, you can
Yeah,
put a
we'll be
link on it
adding
if you
them
want.
on the notes. Yeah, all the tools that we've been
Yeah.
using so far.
Yeah. And it's been really great because I can set a time that I always work out, eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, time to read books. And if, for example, like if this would normally be my dinner time, but because this podcast Zoom meeting, it was put in the calendar, it moves the dinner an hour later
Right.
automatically. So it's been quite helpful for setting my time, my schedule. And then I got
Awesome.
COVID, so I couldn't do anything
Then you
anyways.
block bunch of stuff. Yeah, it's been it's definitely it's that moment, right? And you are used to just keep driving to the office. I mean, it's same thing like when COVID happened is, oh, I don't have to go to the office. For me, it was just it was a heaven, right? Like, I don't have to go to Markham and drive up there. So since then I've been working from home, and I refuse to go back to the office right now. But yeah, so let's dive into the due diligence. Obviously it took you some planning, right? So you just don't wake up and say I'm retiring tomorrow, right? So for those that are listening, I think you have put a plan in place. You went through some due diligence of yourself while you are working, and you have set up yourself some goals. Everybody has a goal. The interesting part about your story is that you set a goal, but you have a planning, strategy and planning, how you got there, right? So, and the type of properties that you bought and so on. So can we start? We have here, like, we're going to be talking about, the properties and how you did the planning to that. How did you decide that 2 to 3 units or 4 units are the best suited? Can we dive into the due diligence on the planning that you did to the goal, that you're going to retire, and how you start doing a due diligence on properties and cash flows and all that stuff?
Right. So the overarching planning required is, if anyone's played the cash flow board game from the same author as Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, it's the goal is to have your cash flow from each individual source add up or exceed your current job income. So let's just say my job monthly income is $5,000, then all the cash flow from each one of these properties needs to add up to $5,000. And then once it does, I don't need to work anymore because the cash flow provides the 5,000 instead of my job providing the 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal out there was to just find properties with as much cash flow as possible. Um, in the beginning, when I first started, I actually didn't quite know what I was doing,
Okay.
but I was willing to just jump in straight to the deep end and learn from doing rather than. I mean, I still read and learned as much as I could, but I figured I would learn the best from just taking action directly. And so the first property I actually ended up acquiring was a student rental.
Okay.
Um, because running the numbers on it was it would provide me a ridiculous amount of cash flow, and the numbers were correct. It was cash flowing me about $2,000 a month after it was fully up and running. And this was based on the assumption that in Belleville there's a small college called
Right.
Loyalist College.
Hmm.
Um, However, when I bought it, the assumption was my personal experiences as someone who went to university was I know how university students work and I can rent to them, but a college is different in a sense. Majority of the people, the locals, they commute to class, so they don't actually need to go to class. They don't need a residence to
Right.
go to school. But the school, the college also had a significant international student presence. Over half of the population's international students, and 99% of them were from India.
Okay.
Funny enough, they were all Indian students. So I was expecting to rent to a bunch of people that were like me, but I ended up dealing with a lot of newly arrived international students who didn't quite know the culture or expectations here. A lot of them came and thought you can just get a place right away. Like this poor kid,
Right.
his brother dropped him off here with just a suitcase and left and thought he could find a place that night.
Wow.
Yeah. but and it, so it made a lot of money, but it was a lot of work. And in the beginning, I self-managed. So it was 8 bedrooms in that house, and I was in charge of finding the tenants individually. That was very challenging. Um, Now the numbers might look good on student rentals, but the work involved
Hmm.
is even higher. And I would say I will say like pain in the ass adjusted ROI isn't quite there.
Yeah. Yep.
And, and since then, I've been buying multifamily like duplexes, triplexes, and things like that.
Right.
And the reason why I do that is just the numbers just make sense. If you look at, a simple cash flow calculation, you have how much rent you could be generating and how much your expenses are, and then how much your mortgage payment would be. Buying a duplex, triplex makes so much more sense than buying a single family. Like, for example, you can buy a single family that's, let's just say, 4 bed, 5 bed, 2 bath house, or you can buy a duplex that's 2 bed, 1 bath each. That would make way more money than a single family
Right.
would. And just you get the benefit of economies of scale, right?
That's right.
It's two rental units, but you have one roof to fix. You have
That's right.
one lawn, things like that.
And also your
And
risk is lower, right? So
yeah,
I learned in those days that it's having a 2 units, 3 units is better because there is no point, there is no day that both unit will be empty on the same day. So that's
exactly.
reducing the huge risk there. At least currently I have a property in Brampton. It's a duplex. I renovated the basement, and the upper unit is going to be living, and I'm not hurt because I know my basement will cover the cost.
Exactly. And the more units you have, the more stable your entire portfolio becomes.
That's right.
The likelihood of one unit not paying or being vacant for a bit is not going to break anything.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely. So you got into the duplexes, triplexes. Were there any specific type of properties? I would say they were bungalows, or they were story like a Victorian, or you were converting them yourself to get to that level. What you were doing?
In the beginning, I wasn't as comfortable with the renovation and construction aspect of it as someone who's grew up relatively white collar. I didn't know how to change a
Yeah.
furnace filter until I bought my own house. um,
I love that. Crash course.
So initially I bought existing duplexes instead of something that needed to be converted. Belleville has a significant part of town that's quite old, and there's a big chunk of our city is actually zone R4. In Belleville, R4, if you look it up, it's actually you're allowed to have duplexes and even triplexes in it. And these homes are usually on quite large lots, and they're usually already duplex triplexes, and you can buy these for, they were quite reasonably priced back then in 2019, early, even in 2020. But usually the problem is that these came with significantly low rents, with people living in them already that aren't really willing to move. They're paying like $500 a month. So what I did was I focused on looking for properties that were vacant or open to being vacant. So it would be a line of dialogue between, it wasn't me, my agent, I guess, working with the seller's agent to see what the tenants' demographics, like what their appetite was to vacating. And in the duplexes that I've acquired, I acquired one where it was actually a student rent. It was a duplex, but they were both being operated as student rentals, and they were moving out at the end of August anyways.
Okay.
So I acquired that got it completely vacant, and I was able to just do very light renovations, I think I just did flooring and paint for that, only one of the two units, and I managed to rent that out. And I think I currently rent, that's a duplex. I think I got for around $250, and I managed to rent that out for, I think it's $1,600 each unit, something around there. And so my cash flow from that alone was
that's amazing,
$1,000 plus. So
yeah,
just from that, I'm looking at this. Wow, I'm a fifth of the way there.
Yeah, I know, eh? I'm yeah, just to give you one story for my property. This Brampton property I was talking about, it took me, I think it's taking me 10 years to turn it around. So what I mean by that, in 2008, 2009, I bought the bungalow in Brampton for $269. Okay, it was legal duplex, $269. So today we are looking in the north of 900, maybe, the value of that bungalow. But the issue was the tenants. They were there. They were long-time tenants, and like I said, this is my nest egg, right? So my plan was really, as long as the property is cash flowing, the tenants are paying, and the cash flow was, I didn't have that mindset of, I want that, a huge cash flow to retire tomorrow, right? So now, the tenant in the basement, has gone to a retirement home. So I renovated that. Of course, COVID delayed a bunch of stuff, and then I got a notice as part of my negotiation with the upper unit tenant as well. I'm trying to, to see if they will leave. Fortunately, they decided to leave by themselves before I even told them that, So just now I'm doing a turning point. My basement right now is rented at $2,000. Okay. And 40% utilities. And I'm hoping the upstairs will be $2,500, plus utilities. And overall, my cost of this will be with taxes and I did the one refi, but my cost is about $2,200. So only after 10 years, like I said, it took me 10 years to get to that level, but I was just calculating that we should be hitting $2,000 a month as a cash flow. So, so now I'm saying, you know what? I don't have to wait my, my late retirement.
Yeah.
And I was telling my wife, George did it. Why should I not do it? Anyways, that's my goal there. I have two of those guys that I'm going through the transition. And again, you like you said, you gotta know your number, right? What is that number you looking for to retire? And that's a part of your due diligence, right?
Exactly. And in my case, luckily, so my my girlfriend, my girlfriend of over 12 years, still my girlfriend, my partner. At the moment she was pursuing entrepreneurship, doing her e-commerce business, but I wasn't going to rely on that. So at the time, we were living, when she first started, she wasn't making any much income anyways. So we were living off of my income entirely, very comfortably. So I just had to make sure that my real estate replaced my income, and that was sufficient to. I already know I can live very comfortably on that. So if my real estate can bring that much income in, then I would be able to live the same quality of life as I did when I was working. But you were saying, after 10 years, you were able to get the cash flow looking for. But I think a lot of people who are a lot of people have been messaging me after I announced my retirement. I think it was a lot of people talking about it, and the struggle now is that they're in a situation where being in healthcare and just COVID, I don't know what has gotten into people in the last 2 years, but people have just they've lost their temper. They have no patience left more. They're just so nasty all the time. And I have like at least 50 people who have reached out to me, and they're asking, how can I do the same? I can't take it anymore in this profession. Like, I'm going to leave this profession whether I can afford it or not. That's the situation they're in. And I'm sure, I don't know if you said your wife is a nurse, probably something similar sentiment as well.
My daughter just graduated from nursing as well. So as the COVID just happened, and she's graduating in just now, April, so it's kind of interesting. I want to see what her thoughts are, right? So, but I think it's a very common theme. Like, she's going into more kids specific, and her comment was, I want kids because parents are more humble because you're taking care of their kids, So she doesn't want to work in a hospital. She doesn't want to, because people don't have patience anymore, right? So that's the whole. I think it's very common situation that is going on around. But go ahead. You are helping the other professional, like other healthcare professional as well.
Yeah, I didn't think I would get such a response from other healthcare workers. They weren't not just pharmacists, but I've had nurses reach out to me. I've had I don't remember what else. I think a respiratory technology therapist. They just all tell me the same story of the patients getting so nasty, and they're just essentially verbally abused and overworked on a daily basis, and they just can't. They're amazed that I was able to do it, and they're essentially begging for me to teach them how to do it. But at the current, they're not in a position where they can wait 10 years like you did for your tenants to turn over. So the importance of getting a cash flow at the beginning is so important for if you're trying to retire as early as possible.
That's right.
Another example is the second duplex that I acquired. That one, it was listed. I think I bought it for just over 300, but it was listed with the current tenants in there, and they're paying something like 500 for one and 600 for the other unit, something crazy low. And they actually ended up, I think the listing ended up getting expired after a lack of interest, and they relisted it with the exact same description, everything. But if you look at the pictures, they put new pictures up, and there was no furniture in any of them.
Oh, wow.
And I saw that on the first day it came up. I called up my realtor. I'm like, I don't care if it's January 2nd. We're going to go see this today.
Yeah.
And I think it was either January 2nd or the 3rd. It was like, we were like still like hungover from partying New Year's.
Yeah.
We went to go see that, and you know what? It was vacant, but the seller agent, I don't know what it was. They didn't try very hard to highlight that, and no one else noticed. So I got that one at a steal. But it's just the minute things you got to look out for to make sure that you can cash flow on day one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, cash flow, buying with cash flow is completely, it's a must, right? Because that's also, in 2008, 2009, because I've gone through the downturn as well. I survived because all my properties, they were all cash flowing, day one. Like all these duplexes that I was referring to, they were cash flowing $350, $400 a month. But it took me substantial time, like 10 years. Like I said, now I'm going to be cash flowing $2,000 a month, and all of that is because the rent has gone up, the property prices have gone up in Brampton area, and that should be generating some good cash flow. But again, you buying this as part of your due diligence. You're buying this with the cash flow. It has to cash flow day one. Otherwise, people have this tendency, especially people that were buying condos in Toronto. They say, you know what, I have to take out $300 or $500 from my pocket, and that's the mentality people used to have, and then you cannot scale with that.
Yes, I'm gonna say something a little controversial.
Uh-huh.
Buying a cash flow negative, okay, buying a single family cash flow neutral property, especially like a pre-construction condo, is no different than going to the casino. You're speculating, you're gambling. You can win a lot of money, but it's not it's a get rich quick maybe scheme
Right.
instead
Right.
of a get rich slow for sure scheme.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's it is a must, right, George? Like you have to make sure you get the cash flow on day one. You
Yeah,
know, at
it's a
least get
different
there.
story. It's a different story if you're buying like a larger multifamily and there's low rents because of their old tenants, but you know for a fact that they're gonna have to leave eventually.
Right. You're
So
gonna
you're
have
gonna
to.
it's
You will stabilize it.
but if you have a brand new condo and with
Yeah.
market rents and you're still cash flow negative, then there is no possible upside to this.
That's right. And we see that all day long. You know, people are buying for speculation. It's gonna go up, and I'm curious to see what they are thinking now. At this time that we are going through in April 28th, and what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and someone like me who's been purchasing real estate for cash flow reasons, and equity is nice. It's nice to know that my property has gone up in value on paper, but to be honest, I don't really care what value the properties are right now. In fact, if I'm trying to acquire more, I'd rather be low than high because I have no use for it. I'm not selling anytime soon. I need that money to feed and house myself.
Right.
So the cash flow is all that matters. The equity could go to zero for all I care in the moment.
Right.
I don't have no need for it.
Exactly. The cash flow, man. They used to say cash flow is king.
Yeah.
So now let's move to the next topic. Now that we figure out you know what property, what your retirement number is, when you went and get your properties. So as part of that, I mean, before you trigger, you had to leverage on your employment to kind of plan all of this, right? So while you still have T4, so let's talk a little bit about that, because that's part of your due diligence, in terms of your retirement, due diligence on planning, right? So now we know the properties you have. You have your number, you're kind of acquiring properties. Let's talk a little bit about the next step, your financial side of things.
Yes. So a T4 income is probably the easiest way to get a mortgage. You show them your pay stub, you show them your T4. It's any mortgage broker's dream,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you have a potential of how much you can borrow with your job income, and you should try your best to max this out before you step away from your job. Utilize this to the max potential as possible. So that just means get as much mortgage, borrow as much money as
Okay,
a
hold on. Are
traditional.
you saying let me go buy my new Lexus car or something like that?
No. Well, if you
Like go
wanted to
spend?
buy a Lexus, if you really want to have a Lexus, you should probably do it before you quit your job as well, because you may not qualify for that either. But we have there's the definition of good debt versus bad debt.
That's right.
And good debt is debt that even though you're borrowing money, you're using that money to buy something that makes you even more money, more than the cost of borrowing that money. Whereas bad debt, you're buying something that either it doesn't make any money, so you're just making payments on it for no reason. So you want to acquire as much good debt as possible. Borrow money so you can buy things that make money,
Right.
and do it while the banks will let you do it.
So just a mortgage tip here is that don't buy the car if you're planning to buy your first investment. It's gonna screw up
No,
your numbers. Right?
yeah,
You
for
agree,
sure.
George?
And
Right? As
yeah,
part of
and
your due
this,
diligence, we have tendency of saying, we get the first job and I want my first nice car. Um,
I'm still driving the same car that I got in 2015,
yeah.
only because I couldn't go to work without a car. It's a bare bones basic Mazda 3. I still drive it. I like that car. But I could have upgraded at any point. I think I had said on another podcast that we were at a point where we could have both of us, we were making enough money that we could have financed a Porsche for each one of us and we would have been
Yeah.
fine. I mean,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be putting any money away at that point,
Yeah.
but I could have done any point, but that would just affect our ability to borrow money. And
Exactly.
we couldn't have that.
It's kind of simple as that, right? Like, you buy, a car and, it really dings you like when you're doing your basic mortgage application, you know?
It makes a
It's
surprisingly big difference.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So anyways, for those that are listening, don't buy your first nice car, take that money or get some mortgage approval at least, buy the
Yeah.
investment properly.
And I would also say it's important to work with a investor focused mortgage broker.
Right.
There is a recommended order that you should follow, because some lenders are easier to obtain and some lenders are harder to obtain, and you'll want to do the harder ones first before you have significant debt attached to your name, and then leave the easy ones towards the end when you got like 6 mortgages already.
Right. That's a planning, man. You
Yeah.
have to work with a professional for sure.
Yeah.
What's the next one? You kind of had to line up all of this. Line of credit. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So lines of credits are something that you want to line up as well before you leave your job, because I think all banks will want to know how much you're making before they let you borrow money. There are two kinds of lines of credits. There's home equity line of credits. Those are the ones secured against the property. And then there are those unsecured lines of credits, which are they're almost like credit card cash advances, but a little bit cheaper. You want to maximize those as well, just because one, a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, is really, really cheap, and you can take advantage of the perhaps your personal residence has increased in equity significantly, and you may want to have that line of credit in place so that you can borrow 100, 200 grand at any point whenever you want for a low interest rate. But if you quit, then when you go to make that application, they're going to think you can't afford that interest payment, so they're not going to approve you. So you definitely want to have that in place first, and then you can quit it after. I don't think as long as you don't make it go out of your way to tell your bank that you're no longer working there, they're not going to do anything about it. I haven't heard of any banks retracting anything based on changes of employment, but
Right.
don't take my word on it.
What about the mortgages? I mean, for the listener here, you're let's say you are retired. You have mortgages obviously in these properties, and the refinancing time will come. What is your thought on that? Have you looked at that? What will be an impact or maybe no impact on renewals? Sorry, on renewals, I meant. Yeah.
From what I've been told, at renewal time, if you're not working anymore, they will, if you're using the same lender, they won't investigate any further. They just give you a blanket and you just sign the paper that they give you, and they'll continue as if everything is going the same. But it will affect your ability to pull extra equity if you did want to switch lenders, or you want to increase. Yeah, if you want to refinance and pull extra equity, you will struggle with that. I mean, there are products for people who are self-employed or real estate investors, but you won't be taking advantage of the prime, the super low rates of the A lenders that they think you're still working. Right?
Exactly. Okay, so now what else do we line up? We did the financing, your line of credits. Anything else in the finance side that we can think of? HELOC and secure line of credits, we did that.
Yeah, I got both HELOC on my property and
Mhm.
additional lines of credits because, it's like prime plus 3 or something like that. But in the end, it's still cheaper than going to a hard money lender if you want to pay for renovations.
Absolutely.
So it's always nice to have that in your back pocket if you needed it. You probably should apply for more credit cards as well. I didn't do that. I ran out
Right.
of time and I was just overwhelmed with work. You could probably do that. There are a lot of uh, additional lending products you could probably sign up for while you still have, but I don't think I did anything beyond what I did.
Awesome. Okay, so now you pull the trigger, right? So
Yeah,
you pulled the trigger. I think. Can you remind us exactly when did you do that?
it was in the beginning of March, maybe
March.
beginning or mid March or so, about a month ago, just over a month ago.
It's been a month that you are running solo right now, running a business.
Yeah. Well,
Well, it's not
how do
retirement.
I?
I know you are visiting the property. You are on the construction side. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a fourplex right now. I'm
Right.
actually gutting it and redoing it completely. So it's no walk in the park by any means, but I heard this phrase from somebody a while ago. I don't remember who, but he said, real estate is funding my lifestyle, but real estate is not my lifestyle.
Right.
Something like that. So I'm trying to
I
keep
heard
real
our
estate.
friend Gary Hibbert say that as well.
Yeah,
You know.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep the real estate this passive thing that is allowing me to live the life that I want rather than replacing my pharmacist job with a real estate investor job, if that makes
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he made it very beautiful there, and he was saying, and yeah, and I'm kind of thinking the same one. I'm not planning to collect houses, for the fun of, I want number of doors and everything. I am strategically trying to figure out or plan in a way that the enough doors I have to fund that my lifestyle, because some people get caught into, oh, I want 20 doors, I want 50 doors, and they keep going, but they are not looking, in my opinion, it's like, okay, it just becomes a collector, right? At one point you're gonna enjoy those moments you said, you're gonna miss out with your kids, what is that, what is the goal, right? So he made it very beautiful. He's a realtor as well, and he basically said, I realize I don't like real estate, but I love real estate because it's funding, my lifestyle. So that's the reason I'm doing it. And that was beautiful. It's just we get caught up in there, right? Like when you start, you're like, I'm an investor. But then the whole due diligence here is, you put it very beautiful plan, like where, what you have, what you need, and then you went and calculated that, how to get there, but we were getting caught in my time. I think we were getting caught as well in how many doors people want. And the funny thing, it was every time you go to these webinar or workshops, monthly workshops, the first question you will get asked is, how many doors do you have? Does it matter? There's a guy in States, he kind of messaged me, saw my post on Instagram, and he said, let me help you scale, and something like that, and basically said, I'm going to get you lots of properties. I said, that's not my goal. My goal is, I have 10 properties and it's beautiful, it's funding my lifestyle, and I'm done. I'm not looking for a job, honestly.
The only question you need to ask yourself is, am I living the life I want to live? And that's all that matters. If there are certain things that you need additional funds for, additional passive income for, then you should by all means go do everything you can to obtain it. But if all you need to make your life happy is $5,000 a month, then obtain that passive income and then spend all your time being happy doing what
Being you,
makes you being you. You know,
being
I don't have
you.
any kids yet, but I want to be there for every important step of the way. I want to be able to walk into school, pick them up from school every day. I want to be able to go to, when they have their dance recitals or whatever they're
Right,
called.
right. And swimming classes, tons of stuff. Swimming classes, I had a great moment where, I had to teach my daughter how to skateboard, and that was amazing. It was a fulfilling moment for sure. So I will encourage people to have that purpose and, plan it in a way, George, you have done it beautifully, and the nuggets here is not always about, collecting the number of doors, but it's understanding what you need to kind of create that freedom, and
Yeah,
that's the nugget here.
and I think people, you do have to think beyond your little bubble as well, because I could have stopped. I didn't have to do those fourplex. It's making my life quite miserable, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
um but I have goals beyond what my life is, and one of the biggest things for me is the fact that my parents are still working is making me very disappointed in myself. I retire myself, but now my next goal is to retire them. Recently, my dad actually, I don't actually remember exactly what he does, but he works for an auto manufacturer. I
Yeah.
think he's an electrician, but for industrial. Um, he worked at they live in Mississauga. He worked
Magna.
in Magna. I think
Hmm.
they have a Brampton one
Yeah. Yeah.
that closed down recently, and he lost his job. He got a nice fat severance out of it, but now he had to look for a new job, and the place that he ended up working for is GM in Oshawa, and this poor guy has to drive from
Oh,
Mississauga
from
to
Mississauga.
Oshawa every day. And to hear the day my mom called me and told me that my dad has to start driving to Oshawa every day, it hurt me on the inside because I couldn't do anything about it yet. And
Right.
my next goal is so that neither of them have to go anywhere that they don't want to go.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, it's beyond ourselves, like it could be for our kids as well, like for me, like as an example, it was my kids. They will graduate with the zero debt. That is a beautiful, absolutely zero. They can start their fresh lives, professional life if they want, with no debt. And that's one of our goal. Me and my wife, we set that from the beginning. Because it's funny because she was paying her debt for almost like 10 years after we got married, because she came from, from from the OSA program, right? So it was taking time. So, and I started my investment journey really pretty much 10 years ago, like really, I was already 40 at that time, so a little bit late, but still I was driven, set up those goals, and like everybody else, like yourself as well, let's do it. You got to take action. And then I heard that a lot from you is planning is great, but action, you have to go and do it. Right.
100%. You're gonna read. You can read as much as you want. You can listen to as many podcasts, watch as many YouTube videos, but you're never actually gonna feel ready.
But I think the common what we see, the common item here is we take the action, and then you will learn it, you will figure out, right? The mistakes that we make, they are all tuition fees. They're
Oh
all
yes.
tuitions, you're really paying to yourself, you know what I mean?
Every time something like that happens and it costs me some money, I
Yeah.
always tell my partner Jesse, I was like, still cheaper than my degree.
Okay, now we are on the same page. 100%. I call it usually tuition fee when people ask me, what if you do this mistake, or what did it? That's the best way to learn. Consider it your college tuition fee, because in college they won't teach you that, right? But you are investing you're taking action, you learn something that nobody else maybe know in your family, right? So beautiful. I mean, amazing. Thanks, George. Like, I'm gonna ask you some basic questions, personal questions.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about. All right, George, you are a pharmacist. You're still a pharmacist in your blood. So, what is your healthy snack? When you are working so hard everywhere, what are you eating on the go, man?
Healthy snack. Um, I make it a habit to not snack at all.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
I I actually, when I was in school, I actually um somewhat competitive in the sport of weightlifting, like the one where you throw the weight, the ones that shows up in the Olympics, the clean
All
and
right.
jerk and the snatch. So from when I was training for that competitively, I was actually quite strict with my own diet, and uh, that's kind of just carried forward in my entire life. So I'm still quite strict with the
Nice.
diet that if I had everything my way, I would probably plan all my meals in an Excel file and make it ahead of time. I
Oh,
used to do that when
man.
I was in school, and I kind of thrive on that. Funny enough, I don't like the chaos of not knowing what's next. So I don't really have any snacks unless it's explicitly planned and fits exactly the number of calories and carbohydrates and proteins that
Wow.
I need. But this is it. So to answer your question, my favorite snack that used to fit into my uh,
Your plan, yeah.
Excel spreadsheet was actually a great value ice cream sandwich. Um, because I was always short on calories, and eating healthy food would actually make me really nauseous because of how much space it takes up.
Okay.
So I would eat, and this is back when I was working overnights when I was a
All
pharmacist, and
right.
I
Wow.
would come home. I would have no appetite. I'm looking at my Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, oh God, I gotta eat this meal here, eat this meal at this time, and I had no appetite. So I've learned that when I got home at 8 a.m., the first thing I gotta do is eat 2 ice cream sandwiches so I can even have an appetite to eat breakfast.
Wow. Wow. Man, spreadsheet, I need to get there. Do like you there, because the COVID has made the fridge to be very close to my office door, like everybody else, So that discipline is definitely an amazing tool to have, Um, to close up, what advice you can give to the listener that are starting? And I'm sure you're getting lots of questions about, how can I retire? So would you like to say to the people that are studying and they are thinking about, that journey as well?
Someone who's starting, who's looking to retire early, I would say there's gonna be you're gonna tell this to people, and everyone's gonna tell you that it's impossible. Like my own dad told me that it's impossible, and you have to get used to. You have to accept that this is gonna happen to you. The people that you thought would be the most supportive of you, your family, your friends, they're gonna tell you how
Crazy
terrible of an
you are.
idea this is, how crazy you are. You gotta not listen to them. Only listen to the people who have tried, and don't even listen to people who succeeded, because obviously there's a bias there, but only listen to people who have dared to try rather than people who just dismiss the idea entirely. Because let me tell you, it's very possible. It's actually it's way simpler than you think than it seems. All you need to do is get cash flow equal or exceed your job income. And it doesn't even have to be real estate. You can buy vending machines if you want. You can, I saw something where you can literally bid on rights to a certain royalty, and then you get the money paid for that. You can you can buy a laundromat. It doesn't have to be real estate, but it has to be cash flow positive.
Awesome. Amazing, George. Thank you for all your time today. And this is George. And George, how can people find you as contact?
So you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. I think my handle is at Cashflow George, as staying true to my name. No spaces, nothing, just Cashflow George. Instagram is probably the platform I'm the most active on. If you want to reach out to me there. Um, yeah, and if you wanted to reach out to me directly there, you can email me there or send me a text. Don't call me. I'm I don't
On the
like
go.
unexpected phone calls.
it may sound like those duck cleaning people. Anyways, George, listen, thanks very much for your time today, and I hope you for all the best, and thanks for those nuggets you just dropped there. Planning and strategy, it's amazing. It's part of the due diligence. But again, thanks for joining the Due Diligence Nuggets podcast.
No problem.